G'day guys and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to be talking about 5 hard truths about selling Pokemon cards and Pokemon sealed product that most YouTubers aren't telling you about. So the first hard truth that we're going to talk about today is that scams exist in this hobby. Now, a lot of you may have seen PokeVault's video recently where he talks about getting 2 chargebacks totaling over $7,000 US for some packs that he sold to a random box break person who ended up turning out to just be a scammer and got all of that money charged back to him. Didn't even have to return the product. All he had to say was that it was unacceptable. Now, this is a hard truth to the Pokemon hobby. Unfortunately, money invites greed, and the more money that you bring into the hobby, the more that unfortunately greedy people will get involved in the hobby and try to scam people out of their hard-earned cash.
I love gold!
And once you've been in this hobby for a while and you've got yourself some big ticket items, some, $5,000 booster boxes, some $10,000 booster boxes, maybe a case that's worth a lot of money, it actually gets really scary because then you're taking these risks, you're potentially losing out on thousands of dollars, and on top of that, you don't even have the product that you love to look at so much to begin with.
Precious!
So just be aware of that, guys. Do your due diligence and just understand that there are a lot of scammers out there. The more Pokemon becomes hyped, the more money that gets involved in this hobby, the more we're going to see it, unfortunately. So just do your due diligence, check out everyone as best you can, and take as little risk as possible because there are plenty of scammers about in this hobby. The second hard truth that we're going to talk about is that it's not always as glamorous or easy as people tend to make it look. I know it's great to say that, you've got this Pokemon box that you've held onto for 10 years and it's currently worth 10,000 US dollars. But the truth of the matter is, if $10,000 is the top of the market, you probably won't be getting $10,000 for your booster box. If you want to get top of the market, you're going to have to probably sell it on somewhere like eBay or TCG Player and still probably get lucky. But even if you do get the top of the market, you now have to look at paying things like fees, shipping, and these things aren't cheap. For something like a $10,000 booster box, if you're paying 13.5% shipping on that, that's almost $1,500 just in fees to eBay.
What did he say?
Now, it's not that you're still making a lot of money. If you bought that box for retail at say $100, you're still making a lot of money out of it, but just be aware that it might not be as much money as you think it is. Also, if you're selling a lot of big ticket items, don't forget that now you might even have to look at paying taxes, which is also going to come off your bottom line. Now, you might turn around to me and say, no, I'm going to avoid all the fees, I'm going to avoid all the shipping, all the taxes even, by getting it in cash, and I'm going to sell it on Facebook Marketplace. And if you can do that, fantastic, but keep in mind that also most of the buyers also know that you have fees when it comes to eBay. So they're also probably asking you to discount your item, maybe 10%, because, cover the fees on eBay, you're not having to pay them, so they can get away with that. Now, you will miss out on the shipping because you have to see them in person, but that's also a bit of a scary part of the hobby in itself. It can be very anxious going to meet someone for the first time. Not only that, but I'm sure we've all seen the stories of people going to sell something on Facebook Marketplace, they rock up to do the sale, and they end up getting robbed, and now they're injured, they don't have their product, and they don't have their money. So kind of a lose-lose-lose situation, really. On top of that, if you're selling on Facebook Marketplace, you're probably going to have to discount away from the top of market because you're now looking at a smaller demographic. You now have taken away from all the people in the world, and you're only dealing with the people in your specific area. So now you've got a lot less people you're selling it to. Some may not be interested in that item, and the ones that are, especially if it's a big ticket item, may not be willing to pay as much as you're asking. So if you really need to move that item, you may end up having to discount it. The third hard truth that we're going to talk about is that holding long term isn't easy. As we spoke about in our last video, one, it takes up a hell of a lot of space. If you want to get enough product to really make a lot of money in this hobby, it's going to either take up a lot of space in your house, or you're going to have to look at getting another storage facility, at which point, how much money are you paying in rent compared to the gains you're making on the actual products? On top of that, you're also running the risk that because these are physical items and you're holding them for say 3 years, 5 years, maybe 10 years, maybe even longer than that, you are running the risk that they could potentially be damaged, they could be stolen, they could just be lost. You know, a fire could happen in your house and that takes out all of your Pokemon stuff. And all of a sudden you're left with none of that money or product at all. Now you might say, well, that's fine. I'll go out and get insurance. Well, that's great. And for anyone who has a really large collection, I would highly recommend that. However, now keep in mind that you also have another expense that is going to be coming off your bottom dollar when you eventually sell that product. So I think the long and the short of this really is, if you can't afford to hold an item for at least sort of 3 to 5 years, then I wouldn't even bother.
You have to ask, big man. You can't afford it.
I got $4.
Because what we're experiencing, the growth that the current hobby is going through, is not normal. This is not as much growth as the hobby usually goes through. Usually we'd be running at sort of maybe 5-10% gains with the odd outlier per year. At the moment, things are just crazy, but do keep in mind that that box that you bought for $100 or $150 isn't going to be doubling every 6 months for the rest of its lifetime. Instead, usually we get small gains, or we can have long periods of either no growth at all, or long periods of even the product declining in price. So that's why I say only buy what you can afford, because if you can't, or if you're going into debt, you will find periods, this will cool off eventually, and you may have to sell at potentially a loss or nowhere near as much profit as you thought, and then you're going to lose a lot of interest, you're going to go out of the hobby, and then you're not going to be compounding that collection over time, and eventually it's just not even worth doing. Our fourth hard truth for today is that scalping or scalpers don't actually probably make as much money as you think they do. Now, while a lot of people in the hobby at the moment are talking about, you know, buying something for $50 and flipping it for $100 tonight, or I've seen Facebook shorts of, you know, I've made $10,000 before breakfast. Fucking good on you, mate. But the truth of it is that scalping Pokemon doesn't actually make that much money. Again, back to our point before, is you probably won't get top of market. We'll use, say, a prismatic ETB for an example here. If you're buying a prismatic ETB for, say, $50 and you can flip it that night for $100, great, $50 profit, right? Well, probably not really. At the end of the day, you're going to have to either sell it on eBay, at which point you're looking at fees. If not, you're going to have to sell it on Facebook Marketplace, which you'll probably have to take out the fees anyway to discount it to move it on Facebook Marketplace. You now either have to sell it in person, which as we discussed earlier can be quite scary and even dangerous, or you have to pay for shipping. So you're looking at probably, you know, maybe selling it for $80 once you've taken out fees and shipping. So you've made $30 on that product. Great, I guess, but at the end of the day, the amount of effort you had to go through to get that product, you probably would have just been better off going and getting in your car and doing an Uber job for a couple of hours, and you probably would have made more money, and everyone wouldn't hate you as much.
Why would you say something so controversial yet so brave?
The other side of that, though, I guess, is there'd be people turning around and saying, well, you know, I could get that $30 and I could scale it and I could do that 1,000 times and then that's $30,000, or I could do that 10,000 times and that's $300,000.
Boom! 2 + 2 is 4, -1, that's 3, quick maths.
And whilst that all sounds great, once you start dealing in those sort of kinds of capital, you become a business. When you're bringing in that much revenue, you are essentially a business. Now, for those of you who don't know, I do actually run a small business in my real life outside of YouTube, and I can tell you that it comes with a lot of costs. Things like insurances, invoicing software, paying an accountant, paying a lawyer. Tax is a huge one. You know, tax is 30% probably of what your gross profit is. So if you're getting $30 profit, you're now losing another $10 to your tax. Then all your other fees, you're probably making maybe $5, $10 a sale. And in some cases, probably even losing money. And that's why over the long term, these scalping businesses, if you could call them that, they just don't work out because the margins are way too thin to run off properly, and they end up probably burning out in a year, 2 years if they can make it that long. with overall probably not much money, and some of them even losing money. So if you've got a couple of hours free and you're looking for something to do, I don't know, make a YouTube video, go drive some Uber, do something where you're not fucking everyone else's enjoyment up, and probably still making more money in the long run anyway. And number 5, diversify. Sometimes it's the weird stuff. So if you had have come into this hobby in 2018, people would have been telling you, don't invest in Evolutions, it's overprinted garbage, just a reprint of base set. Evolutions booster boxes are going for what? If you entered the hobby in 2019, people would have been telling you, don't waste your time on Team Up. Hidden Fates is the king of Sun and Moon. Buy that and you'll be a millionaire in 5 years. Now, Hidden Fates is doing pretty well. It saw a lot of reprints, so it's taken a little while for that growth to come. But if we look at Team Up, with a bit of hindsight, what was the better option? In 2020, they would have steered you away from Team Up again. They would have said, Champion's Path is the set to go for. This set, you can't find it anywhere. Everyone wants it. 2 beautiful Chase Charizards, a rainbow, and a shiny Charizard, because remember, this is before alt arts were really a thing. And as Father Time would have it, it turned out that Champion's Path was probably not a great investment. It hasn't really grown at all over the last 5 years. And again, Team Up just going through the roof. Even in 2023, only 2 years ago, you would have heard a heap of people telling you, don't buy any of those Charizard UPCs, they're overprinted, they're everywhere. They were discounted, they were almost half price in most places because they just couldn't get rid of them.
You gotta be shitting me.
And this is what I'm talking about. Sometimes it is obvious. By the end of Sword and Shield, we knew far and away that Evolving Skies was always going to be the king of that era, and it has proven to be true. However, sometimes there are those hidden gems, those small winners, and by buying what you like and a little bit of everything, you'll find them. Things like the Charizard UPCs. There was a thing called the Mythical Squishy Collection, which is now worth an absolute fortune compared to the discounted price we bought it at. I bought the Snorlax EV Team Up tin because I just loved the art. Still to this day, I think it is the funniest Pokemon card they have ever produced. I didn't even know that it had a few packs of Team Up and I think Unified Minds, and I don't know what the 4th pack in it is, but I just love the look of that tin and I love the look at that promo. So I bought it and it's turned out to be an absolute killer buy. I think it goes for like $600 US or something like that now, whereas before, I bought it for $80 Australian, so like $50 US, I think, as part of a discount sale. Even things like sometimes battle boxes. I've got a Pikachu Raichu GX battle box, or Pikachu Zekrom, something like that. I'll pop it up on the screen shortly. But because it has 3 tag team promos, it's gone through the roof in value. I think I paid like $30 US for it, and now it's going for over $100 US. So it just goes to show that sometimes just buying what you like, these real hidden gem pickups can become massive winners. Well, that's it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it helpful and hopefully some things that you can put into action so you don't get stung with these sort of issues later down the track. If you did find the video helpful, guys, as always, make sure to give that like button a little tickle down below. Leave a comment and let me know what hard lessons you've learned in your time in Pokemon, or if you're new to the hobby, feel free to ask me a question. I'd love to feature it in a video for you guys. Subscribe down below. There'll be plenty of content like this on the channel. And have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.